What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Logisticalstyles coming at you with another video, and today I'm going to go over my Pioneer Rev 5. I know I talked about this in the past and I made videos about why I wanted to upgrade to it, and I actually ended up upgrading to it, but I never really discussed it or talked about, how I have it set up or what I'm doing with it. And obviously I'm DJing with it, but I think everybody uses equipment a little bit differently, and I just want to give my take on what I love about this controller and why I think it's like the best controller I've owned. I think it's fair to say it's the best controller I've owned. I'm still at heart, I'm a turntable guy and I love using my turntables, but due to the convenience and the weight and all other little factors, when I do my events, when I go out, I'm usually using a controller. And previously, for like the past year and a half, I was using the Pioneer Rev 1. One, because it was small, compact, easy to get around with, easy to travel with, and it was I like the layout of it. I like the battle mode layout of it. I like the jog wheels. I like the way they have the cue points or the cue pads on the mixer section instead of under the platters. But the problem with that was it's just too small. I needed something a little bit more full sized. I did try to put it. I did have it in a nice case, and that gave it a little bit more girth, and it made me look a little bit more official versus using just a little tiny controller on a table. But I knew it was time to upgrade, and that's why I went with the Rev 5. I wanted to get it over a year ago when it first came out, but it was on back order for a very long time. While I was on back order, I ended up trying other controllers that didn't work out. The Mixon 8, that didn't work out. And then I tried to go with the Denon 6000 paired up with my mixer, and that wasn't as convenient as I thought it was going to be. So I decided to go ahead and get the Rev 5 when it became available and when it was also supported by DJ Pro, because that's the software I've moved over to use. And I got to say, the combination of DJ Pro with the Rev 5 is pretty great. It's not as tight, in my opinion, as the combination of the Rev 5 with Serato, because, it was made for Serato. And so I think it just works better. But for the most part, it's very, very similar. The only thing I have, some I guess complaints about is the way the jog wheel feels when you're using one software versus the other. I think the jog wheel feels a lot more accurate and the response is a lot tighter when I'm using it with Serato. And if I had to guess, I would say it probably is with Rekordbox as well, but I don't have Rekordbox anymore, and I don't feel like downloading it. And I don't think I'll be using Rekordbox. But with Algorithm DJ Pro, it feels like I have to fight it a little bit more to make it work properly. But other than that, everything works well. The controls work well. Everything maps out perfectly. And I just wanted to go make a video about it so we can go over it. So what we'll do is we'll move over to the workstation where the controller is set up, and I'll show you how I have it set up in the case that I'm using. I have a headliner RoadCase, and it was made for the Rev 7, but the Rev 5 and Rev 7 have very similar dimensions. So I got a great deal on it at Guitar Center, so I just went with that. And it's been working great for me for all the weddings I've done over the summer. So let's move over there and take a look at how I've got it set up, and I'll show you, how I'm using it and why I love it. All right, so here we are. This is the top-down view of the controller in the RoadCase. This is the headliner RoadCase. It's made for the Rev 7 specifically, but the Rev 5 has a very similar size. I think it's nearly identical, so it fits in perfectly. I found it at Guitar Center. I went in looking for a soft case that I could carry it and travel with, because like when I'm doing like gigs and bars or traveling, I don't always really want to have this case, but the deal that I got for this was just too good to pass up. So I ended up grabbing it, and it actually was a good purchase because it's made my wedding season very, very easy. So this case has room for, it has a lot of foam blocks that come along with it that you can use to customize the way it fits in. Like initially, without the extra foam blocks that came in, this thing sat down really low. It wasn't even with the edge. So I've used the foam blocks that come along with it to raise it up. And I like that because it gives me a little bit of a space. I'll show you in a second, a space where I can fit stuff. If you've seen some of my previous gig logs, you'll notice I used to have the BLX receiver under here, and it worked okay. I didn't have any real issues with it, but I decided to not go that way for a couple of reasons. I want to keep my wireless mics, my Shure wireless mics separate from here, but I do want to have a mic wired into the case for me to use. So I went out and bought this Shure, this is a PG48, yeah, Shure PGA48, and it's a pretty decent microphone, nothing special. It's a little bit cheaper than the SM58, but it does the job. And I have it hardwired into the back of the controller. So the mics on these things are never really great, but I did find that when I was using the Shure microphone, my BLX, my handheld wireless mics, plugged into the back of the controller, there was a problem with me getting a good level. I think it sounds a lot better using a analog, or I guess passive microphone that doesn't have, you know, amplification built into it. It's just the microphone going right into the mic jack. And so that I've gotten it dialed in so it sounds pretty good. You know, you have to play around with the gain attenuator knob on the back. And once you test that out, once you find that right level, just kind of keep it there. And I think I only need to use one microphone input with this controller, even though it does have two. Two is convenient, but I don't really need that. It can help in maybe like a situation where I do need to have two mics and I don't have a wireless, but you know, for the most part, I'm just keeping one microphone wired in to the controller. Now, I love that this controller has an auxiliary input, and I'm using an adapter that goes from RCA to 3.5 millimeter input. Now, the problem with that is most of the devices that I use for auxiliary input are my iPhone or my iPad, and those use either a USB-C or a lightning connector. So I do have adapters that I can use for these. Right now I'm using this here Anker power, or it's a hub. It has two USB-A ports, it has HDMI, SD card reader, and a USB-C port, but most importantly it has a headphone jack. So it allows me to plug this in, and then I plug it USB-C into the iPad, or if I need to use the lightning connector for my iPhone, I do the same thing. I'll eventually get one that is, because I don't need all this extra stuff for this iPad when I'm using it as an auxiliary input. So I'm going to get the actual 3.5 millimeter to USB-C connection eventually, but this is what I'm working with for right now. And it has come in handy for situations where I need to play music off of like Tidal. Maybe I have the music downloaded in the offline locker that you can use with mobile devices. So I might not be able to play it through DJ Pro, but I can still play it from the actual Tidal app on my iPad. So that has come in handy and has helped me a lot. Next, I have the USB-C ports that you use for connecting computers to it. I have one set up for my iPad and then one set up for my MacBook. So I can switch. I have both of them set up. They can both run DJ Pro, or you can have one run Serato, one run DJ Pro, or Virtual DJ even, and it works great. For the outputs, I use XLR to 1/4 inch outputs, a nice size cable. And then I also have a power strip. You can't really see it back here, but I do have a power strip Velcroed to the back of the case that holds the power supply for my iPad, my MacBook, and the actual supply for the controller. I'm gonna pull this out a little bit more so you can see that I have the power brick for the controller velcroed down to the bottom of the case, so that keeps it in place. And then I also need to do the same thing for my iPad on my MacBook power supply. I'll get around to doing that, adding some Velcro to keep that in place. But for now, I just keep the controller like this. And this case has one of those glide laptop trays. So that makes things a lot easier. I wish it was all blacked out. This one isn't blacked out. It has the chrome edges on it, but this was the only thing that I had available. Now, one thing I want to also point out is that I had somebody ask a question about how do I keep all this stuff from moving around when I'm transporting it. Well, for one, you've seen that I Velcroed the power supply for the Rev 5, and I'm going to do the same thing for the MacBook. And then on here, this case came with some extra pieces of foam, and I'll pull it out right here. And it goes here. It's kind of like a wedge, a foam wedge, and I put it underneath the shelf. So when the shelf comes forward, it sits on the jog wheel, holds everything in place. This thing does not move at all when the shelf is slid over. So the shelf would slide over, and you can see the jog wheels don't move. This one doesn't move, but this one does because I took the foam off. But that is what I do to keep it in place. Great piece of foam padding that they gave with this case. They gave the one thing I do like about this case for the controller is they gave a lot of extra padding so you could really customize it. So that helps me keep everything in place. One thing I did add was this here gooseneck mic stand. You know, just screws right on, and it allows me to keep my mic right where I need it. When I'm breaking down, all I have to do is unscrew that and then unplug the mic, put it under the controller, and I'm easy to go. I can transport it. Now, as far as the functionality of it, I think it works out really great. I love the layout that you have the cue pads here instead of under the jog wheels. I never really liked having it down there. It felt like it kind of messed up my workflow when I'm trying to do some quick mixing or do any kind of, really just any kind of mixing. It just was really inconvenient to have it that way. So I love having an actual battle style mixer for your mixer section. And then I also love the fact that you have your pitch control up here. This is just for me and my muscle memory because, you know, I'm used to using turntables and I'm used to having the turntable sideways in battle mode, which would put the pitch control up here. So that's very convenient. And I think this is a nice cross or hybrid solution because even though this isn't the Rev 7 with the moving turntable platters, it is very similar to a CDJ platter, and it feels great. I wish the screens gave you a little bit more info besides just which deck is activated and the needle position sensor or indicator. I wish we had more than just that red light. You know, maybe I kind of do like the old style display, like on the SX controllers where it's all white and you can see the movement. But this is cool. I mean, it does its thing. I'm not a big fan of the 4 decks. I don't use them, and they do become a little bit of a issue because, especially on this side, when I'm scratching, sometimes I hit that and I end up in deck 3 mode. So I wish that wasn't there. I might look into see if there's a way for me to map that to something else. You know, the sensor buttons are there. I love that it has dedicated sensor buttons. So sometimes, especially like when I do like the radio show, I may have to do a on-the-fly editing to keep the curse words out. So it's good to have a button dedicated for that. I love that we have dedicated buttons for your stems, even though I don't use them with Serato, but I do use them with DJ Pro, and it's great to have it there to be able to just instantly get that acapella or pull out the bass line or the drums or the melody. So that, I'm really loving that. And then another part about these buttons is the fact that you can switch their function. So you can make these cue points. So instead of maybe, I mean, I'm not sure why you would want to because you have cue points here, but maybe you might want to have these in sample mode, and then you can switch these to your hot cues. So that would allow you to jump around in the song. So that is pretty convenient to have. And then you have the option to go to Scratch Bank. But I don't think Scratch Bank actually works with this. Or the way I haven't set up Scratch Bank to work with DJ Pro. I think you have to do something different to make that work. But just being able to switch between these with the hot cues is really a nice little function to have. And then you can jump back into stems mode. Another thing I love about this controller is you can adjust the feel of the jog wheel to make it heavier or lighter. And I know I did mention earlier that I felt like Serato, when you scratch with this on Serato, it feels a little bit lighter, but it's not the same lighter that I'm talking about with this jog feel. With this jog feel, it definitely makes it easier to spin back or harder. But when I'm scratching with DJ Pro, it feels like I really have to be more forceful with my hand movements on the jog wheel because it's not as accurate, I don't think. I need to do a little bit more research, but I feel like Serato has a higher resolution, I guess might be the word, when it comes to the spins or the number of ticks that it goes around to get a more accurate feel. I mean, I'm able, don't get me wrong, I'm able to do what I need to do as far as scratching and, you know, even a little beat juggling with it, but I just wish it felt the same as it did when I'm running Serato. I haven't heard too many people complain about that, so I'm not sure. You know, I do like to scratch a lot when I'm at home. You know, I don't scratch too much when I'm doing gigs, but when I'm at home, I do scratch a lot. So maybe that's why I feel it. I notice it because I'm more into scratching. But everything else about this mixer or this controller is just ideal for me. The layout, the cue point, that is one thing I wish they did not have was buttons for switching between your cue points. I wish there was the slider like you have on like the Rain 70. You can just slide back. And the reason I like that is because I can practice like perfecting my double up or my chops when I can do that in the headphone versus doing it live. But it's not a big deal. I'm kind of used to hitting buttons because a lot of the controllers that I have had in the past have had buttons to press for queuing up. The other feature I like about this controller is that there is a dedicated button or knob for your sampler volume. So sometimes, you know, I might load up some samples that don't necessarily have the volumes correctly, you know, leveled out. And it is a great thing that the recent update to DJ Pro has allowed you to change the independent volumes of the samples, but it's always nice to have a volume knob right there in case you hit one and it's way too loud and you can just bring it down really quickly without having to go into the software. I also love that I can have two computers hooked up. I think I mentioned that already. You know, I can switch between computer A and computer B, so I can have the iPad set up on section B, on input B, and the laptop on input A. It works flawlessly to be able to go back and forth between computers. Now, one thing I will say that you should keep in mind if you're using Tidal, when you are logged into one device with Tidal, you can only play music from that device. If you go into the other device and go into Tidal and start playing, the music from the first device will stop. And I had to learn that kind of the hard way, playing music. I thought I would be able to browse through Tidal on DJ Pro on the iPad and then browse through Tidal on DJ Pro on the laptop. And it don't work that way. You can scroll through the libraries, but you can only play from one source at a time. So you can't play from title from both devices. So that's something to keep in mind, because it's not going to give you a warning. It's just going to stop. The music will stop. So something to think about. One thing I do like about this is the load knobs. I did have to kind of get used to it a little bit, being able to scroll through like that. On the Rev 1, there's one scroll knob for both decks, and then you just hit load left or load right. With this one, you have a separate load button and separate scroll knobs. So that, once you get used to it, get that muscle memory and get used to being able to know how to jump in and out of, from the playlist, jump back into the list of the song or the particular playlist you're in, just learning how to navigate and being able to jump back and forth, and understanding what to do if you want to change your view. Maybe you want to jump into a different view. You hit the shift button, and that will work for you as well. They have this whole deck move option for when you want to do 4-deck mixing. Like I said earlier, I don't do 4-deck mixing, so if that's your thing, go ahead, rock out with it. But all I need is 2 decks and a mixer. Keep it old school in some respects like that. Everything else is pretty dope. The effects section, you get great control over your effects, your software effects. There are no built-in effects on this. That's kind of a bummer, but the software effects in DJ Pro are pretty good, so I have no real complaints there. I love having paddles. Ever since I switched over to, I guess, the Rain 70, I've been addicted to having paddles for controlling my effects. I remember when I had the SR2, I had to learn how to use their effects layout, and it was cool, but it's nothing that I really was in love with. Paddles make a much bigger difference as far as being able to hit them and turn them on, turn them off, momentarily start them. I love that. Once again, I love that the layout is just like a regular mixer, even though, the DJ mixer I use with my turntables is Rain. The setup is a little bit similar. Those of you that use like Pioneer S9s and S11s or whatever, I'm sure you're way more comfortable with having this layout because it's almost identical. So that's a really great thing to have. Now, one thing I want to show you about up front is, and I'll have to move the camera around to get this view, is the fact that inside this case, there's a big space here. So one thing I want to do is, I'm looking to get the new Mac Mini, the M4. It will fit in here perfectly with a little breathing room. And I'm looking at some touch screens that I can use. So I will eventually just have a Mac Mini down here and a touch screen, like a 15-inch touch screen. And if I need, I can have a wireless keyboard with a trackpad to do any searching. And so I think that's going to be the next upgrade I'm going to do. So yeah, this is the reasons I love this controller so much and how I've been using it. It's a lightweight controller until you put it in a RoadCase. The RoadCase it does have some weight to it, but it's enough. It's not too much for me. It's enough for me to be able to hold it or carry it with one hand. So even if I do have to take it into a bar gig or restaurant type gig, I can get it in with no issue. As compared to versus me with a RoadCase with my turntables and my mixer, that's definitely a lot heavier. So I can't complain about this. I do love the way I'm able to have everything wired up. When I show up to a place, like if it's plug and play, all I have to do is pull out my cables, my 2 audio cables, and 1 power cable, which goes to the power strip, and everything's on. So it's a real quick setup. Even when I do my mobile events, all I gotta do is place my speakers where they need to go and run cable from the speakers to the mixer, and then this goes to the mixer, and it works out really well. All right, so there you have it. That is how I have the Rev 5 hooked up into my RoadCase. That's why I love the Rev 5 so much, and why I think it's one of the best controllers that I've had so far. Like, until this controller, I would say the SR2 was my best controller that I've owned until now. Even though I did have a great time with the Rev 1, the SR2 had the full bigger jog wheels, and it just had all the proper ins and outs that the Rev 1 didn't have. The Rev 1 was just, RCA output, so I had to use a lot of adapters and stuff. The SR2 had quarter-inch, and I believe had a quarter-inch booth output and XLR output, so that was great. But this Rev 5 has all the inputs and outputs that I need, and more. Some that, like the secondary mic I probably won't use, but it's good to have, and I'm happy that I do have that there. It does have a lot of features that I don't use completely, like the 4 decks 3 and 4, something I don't really use, but I'll find a way to make the use out of those buttons to map something to them. But I think overall, it's a great controller. I probably will not be upgrading controllers for a long time because, once you find something that works for you, I think you should stick with it. Don't really have to go chasing the trends, and there's so many controllers that are coming out now. Some of them are designed for different kinds of DJs. I think the Rev 5 is designed for my type of DJing. I would like to have a Rev 7, but the weight of it is kind of, it beats it. The weight of it with the motorized platters makes it not convenient for me to travel with, I don't think. And I don't travel a lot, but when I do travel with DJ equipment, I would like it to be as light as possible. And I think if I get a nice soft bag or a soft case for the Rev 5, it'll be easy for me to put on a plane and, go travel for a gig with it. So everything else about that controller really just ticks all the boxes that I need for me as a DJ, and it has made DJing a lot more fun. The Rev 1 was small, and I was able to do stuff with it. I could scratch with it. I could, do things, but it didn't have a display on the jog wheels for me to really, like do any kind of beat juggling or scratching, effectively with it. But it definitely got me through a couple of wedding seasons, and I highly do recommend the Rev 1. In fact, the one I used to have, I, passed off to another DJ, and hopefully, it works well for him. I think that's about all I have to really say about this controller. It's a really great controller. I highly recommend it. If you're on the fence about it and you think it might be for you, I suggest going down to maybe your Guitar Center and seeing if they have some used ones on display. They usually don't have them hooked up for you to actually use, but if you can just put your hands on one and touch it and see if you like the feel of the jog wheel, if you like the layout, if it's too big, too small, it's always nice to be able to put your hands on some equipment before you make the purchase. But if you don't have that option, maybe order from a place like Zounds or some other reputable retailers that will have a good return policy in case it's not what you needed. So yeah, this was hopefully a video that can kind of give some information about, how I'm doing things and why I like this particular product, and hopefully it was informative to you. If you like what you're seeing and what you're hearing, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, comment. Let me know if you have a Rev 5. Do you like it? Are you going to continue to use it, or are you going to look for something else, or wait for the next best thing, the next newest thing to come out? Either way, it's your boy Logistical Styles coming at you with another video, and I am out. Peace.